It's a totally different world in Trump 2 versus Trump 1.
Jay Bhattacharya, I know, is a friend of yours. Are you more optimistic now?
I would say I'm cautiously optimistic. Yes, I fully support Jay Bhattacharya for head of NIH and Marty McCary for head of FDA. It's a venomous atmosphere there. The so-called deep state is real.
I'd love to give you the chance to comment on the censorship that we've experienced with the last interview.
The fact that there was censorship is a bit frightening to me, that we're living in a country that refuses to allow facts to be said.
You spoke out and they came after you like a group of hyenas.
Too few people are willing to speak up.
Dr. Scott Atlas, you are the first guest I actually bring back on Real Talk, and that is because we have been censored so fiercely, which means that you have such important things to say. And also, I'd love to give you the chance to comment on the censorship that we've experienced with the last interview that we conducted, where we talked about the COVID vaccine and COVID masking and the way children were expected to be human shields in the lockdown and pandemic. And so welcome back. Thanks for coming back to PragerU and talking to me.
Well, thanks for having me.
I want to let you comment real quick about the censorship that we've experienced on that last episode. And maybe you can just describe what went down and why you think that happened.
Well, it's sort of fascinating that there was any censorship of it because all we talked about was the data. And the fact that there was censorship is a bit frightening to me, that we're living in a country that refuses to allow facts to be said. It's more than just, or worse than just, refusing to let dissenting views be heard, because it's actually suppression of fact, denial of evidence. And we can't have a society that pretends that scientific data doesn't exist. This is very frightening to me, shocking to me. Maybe I'm still an idealist with the fact that, people need to hear the truth. I don't know. But we've seen censorship of that interview. I've been an invited speaker at universities, University of Colorado, then during 2023, where the presentation, which was dozens of slides showing data with the actual source data, the interview was put up on YouTube by the university and then taken down by YouTube and then put back up when it was protested. So, I guess it points to a couple things. One is something that I've said many times, which is the people that said the wrong things or that tried to push wrong information or shelter the public from hearing the truth, they will never admit they were wrong. And I think that's something it's cynical to say, but we have to get used to that. Why? Because it takes integrity to admit you were wrong. And they apparently don't have integrity. So we have to figure out how to get information to the public, because there is a moral and ethical society here. We have children. We also live in a country that's supposed to be a free country. And I think most people are normal in the sense they want to hear the truth. Maybe people in power don't want to have the truth come out, partly because their advice killed millions of people. And that's a very serious problem. So they don't want accountability. But we need to also adjust ourselves. We don't give up saying the truth, but we also need to sort of accept that there's a group of people that will not admit they're wrong. And then we have to figure, how do we get our message out? And that is by doing things like you're doing here at Prager. And I keep speaking, and we have to train young people in early careers, embolden them that the truth matters. I think most of them want the truth. They stand for the truth. We have to get rid of the fear of speaking out. And I'm doing that with some of the activities I'm involved with.
When you talk about they, I think it would be helpful to define this, because probably right in this moment, as people are watching this interview, if we say anything medical, there's going to be a little blurb at the bottom of the video that either YouTube or Google or NewsGuard or whoever it is will slap on and will say, refer to the CDC for the truthful information, which to me, they are they who got things wrong, right? And so ironically, as we speak, even today in 2025, even today, they still have the authority to put labels on our content and claim that what you are saying might be misinformation. I just received very recently an email from NewsGuard, again, confronting us with the supposed claim that we have shared misinformation about COVID, about children being locked down, masking, etc. And so here they are, they that get to claim that what we are saying is not truthful, even though everybody today knows that they've been wrong about so many things.
Yeah, I think the problem is, well, first of all, yes, I agree. The CDC itself was the biggest purveyor of what they call misinformation during the pandemic, the wrong information, false information. In fact, they didn't even put out truthful information. And so that's ironic, at the very least, to think that they're the arbiter of the truth. But even in a bigger picture, no one should be trusted to be the arbiter of truth. I shouldn't be trusted to be the arbiter of truth. No one should. It's a free country. The difference between a human being and an animal is reasoning, the ability to reason. That means critical thinking. So I like to say the era of trusting people or organizations based solely on credentials or titles must be over. We need to be responsible adults for ourselves, for our children. And, there's nothing that complicated about most of these things. We can read the information, we can discuss it, and we can figure out what's correct. And part of it, sure, is credential. But, we need a free society to have the debate, because if you're afraid of the debate, it means you're afraid you can't win the debate.
Do you feel like they've ever apologized to you for what they've done to you? I mean, you had all the credentials needed, and you spoke out and people listened to you, and they came after you like a group of hyenas.
The answer is, generally speaking, no. There was no apology. I don't really care about the apology. I find it comical that they're in a big hole and they keep digging, as the saying goes. I can mention specifically Stanford University. The faculty senate there issued some sort of ad hominem censure of me, with no data really, but partly because I said things like, hey, I cast doubt on the use of masks, which of course it's proven they do not stop the spread or protect the wearer during a viral respiratory infection. And they actually, there was an effort at Stanford by some rational people to get them to rescind that censure recently. And they voted that down. Okay, I don't really care. These people are, in some sense, I mean, these are people who are issuing, they're impotent people, frankly, who want to sort of virtue signal or whatever they want to do. They want to keep claiming they were correct to save face. I don't know. It's just not really important. What's important is that we want people to know the truth. We want people to hear the information. The solution to so-called misinformation is more information. And there is no place in a free society for censorship. What's worrisome about these censures or these lack of apologies is that, okay, people like me, I was raised a certain way. I don't care. It's just they're unimportant people. But what is important is that it causes others to stop speaking. Somebody once said to me, Scott, you can't expect people to be heroes. No, but I do worry that too few people are willing to speak up. I think it's sort of changing. There is a shift in the mood of the country. It's, quote, safer to say the truth. But saying the truth matters most during contentious or challenging times. That's when it matters. It doesn't matter once everybody says, oh, okay. So we have to remember that your true character comes out during pressure, right? Whether it's with your spouse, with your kids, at work, during a crisis. And that sort of goes into what I also always say, which is the pandemic didn't create these things. It just exposed people for who they are.
Are you more optimistic now with some of the people that you know that are going to be involved with HHS, FDA, Jay Bhattacharya, I know is a friend of yours. Are you thinking that things will change, we'll get more transparency and better healthcare, not sick care?
I would say I'm cautiously optimistic. And the reason I say it that way, yes, I fully support Jay Bhattacharya for head of NIH and Marty McCary for head of FDA, and I think they're great. They're gonna do a good job. It's a challenge though. None of this stuff happens so quickly. I think there are people who are naive about how easy it is to change things. It's frankly, it's a venomous atmosphere there. The so-called deep state is real in terms of it simply means a career bureaucracy. There are people that have been in there for decades. They have a lot of power. They outlast presidents. They outlast administrations. They really don't have to toe the line. You would think that's not true, but it really is true. And so I think it's going to be a big challenge for people to come in. We need people from outside government to work in government, of course. But it remains to be seen. I'm cautiously, I know they have good ideas. So I have no problem with the ideas. I'm a little bit concerned how simple it will be to make these dramatic changes. But the mood of the country is far more favorable for change. It's a totally different world in Trump 2 versus Trump 1 in terms of the support by the people. And of course, the support by the people is very persuasive to the opposition party, including, I will conclude, the media. The media is part of the opposition to the Trump administration. There's no doubt about that. And I also think a big difference now is that Twitter has been changed by someone who I happen to think is the most important person in my lifetime for freedom, and that's Elon Musk.
Yeah, I definitely think that the struggles that doctors like you had speaking out and speaking truth with Trump #1 first term may dissipate, given that, the internet is somewhat freer. There are a lot more alternative ways for you to speak out, and hopefully people will follow you and have more courage. My final question, and probably the most important question to me, is that as a parent, I think it's very confusing right now to navigate through our medical system and know what is right and what is wrong, whether it's on vaccines or how to treat our children or what to expect from medicine these days. I think many parents are just in a scramble because of the mistrust that has been created over the lockdowns and COVID. What advice can you give somebody like me on how to think through America's medicine right now?
Yeah, I mean, this is the tough part because it is appropriate that we have lost trust, because that loss of trust was caused by the entities we were supposed to trust, including doctors and hospitals. There's a plummeting of trust even in your own doctor these days, as well as in science itself. So, it's a challenge. I think it's worst probably right now because everything's in a state of flux, and we need to set a new equilibrium. And the equilibrium that needs to be set is one based on transparency, admission of error, and some accountability. And I think these are things that the incoming HHS folks will hopefully be able to do, and that is to make a more open process of, for instance, the FDA, CDC, NIH meetings. These people work for us. We should see what they're saying. These things should be posted immediately. We need term limits on the people in the public health agencies, because this idea that you can be there for decades and accrue a massive amount of power, and during that process have these perverse incentives to cover your own career. You make friends in the media and in other agencies. That's bad for the public. That does harm. We need to have a different process in the scientific journals. We need to have some accountability for the funding. I mean, this is an idea I have put forth, and I've heard Jay also say, which is that, we have 15 plus academic medical centers, universities that get over $500 million per year in NIH funding. They need to ensure that they're doing, free speech, free scientific debate. The essence of science and research is the scientific debate. And if they're thwarting that with faculty censures, for instance, why would they be entitled to U.S. taxpayer money at the tune of $500, $600, $700 million a year every year? Also IRB research. I mean, some of our most famous medical centers did the research sponsored by Pfizer, injecting young children, infants and toddlers, with the COVID vaccines, experimental drugs, for which healthy young children don't have a significant benefit from. I mean, I think that that raises ethical questions. And now, as you know, in a university where you're doing funded research, there's an IRB, an institutional review board, and there's always an ethics person there. Where were these people? I think there's serious ethical questions that were raised. So, this needs to be revisited. And when you do revisit these things and then publicize things, or another one is break the revolving door between the directors of HHS, FDA, NIH, CDC, and the private companies that they regulate. They get royalties, but also they go out and are on the boards immediately of the companies that they regulated. Mm-hmm. Okay, that's unethical. We need to have some sort of at least a delay. Say, I've proposed a 5-year delay from when you can work in government and then go work as an employee or on the board of the companies in the health sector. Okay, we need to restore trust. That's the point of your question. And I think a lot of, there's no magic bullet to that, by the way, because it's very damaged. And again, like I say, rightfully so. So we need to do a lot of things to gradually repair that relationship, because the reality is that regular people don't have the time or really the means to sit there and read and critique all of the scientific studies and the fundamental research, et cetera. That's unreasonable. So that's really not what we mean by gathering information. But what we mean by gathering information is talking to a lot of people, but and other experts and dissenting views and listening to both sides. But ultimately, it's a free country. Okay, so I personally, I'm opposed to all mandated drugs. What kind of a free country requires you to inject a drug into yourself or your child? I just find that common sense wise, no, that's antithetical to freedom. I think you give the information. If you tell somebody who's a rational person, if you don't take this drug, and if this was the truth, if you don't take this drug, your kid's going to die tomorrow. Most people will give the drug to the kid if it's based on valid data. Yeah. So I don't think you need to force anything like that, but you do need to prove the case.
Yes. I mean, that's the issue. Informed consent.
Right.
That's at the bottom line. Look, I had no issues with vaccines until the COVID vaccinations were forced on children. And then I started asking questions. And when we ask any question about any vaccine, you're called a vaccine denier or a kook or a crazy or an anti-science person. And once you start being attacked like that, then you're wondering, well, wait a second, why are you attacking me? Why can't you just give me a plain answer? Right. And so I think that's the state that many parents are in right now, where if people want us to trust them, if the experts want us to trust them, then they need to take the actions that would gain our trust again. And my hope is that the people that are coming in right now will have the courage to clean out the lies and the mess and the corruption, because once they do that, we do want to find people that we can trust. And as you said, when people say, oh, go do your research, it's very easy to say that, but it's not that simple to always do the research. You can fall in the wrong research. You can fall into the hands of somebody who was nefarious in their own ways. And so being able to have institutions that we can trust again, I think is fundamental to our life in America.
If I can, I would add one other thing, which is the trust you have for your own doctor has been destroyed. Okay, I've seen this myself. And I think the answer is we need the individual people. This is what patients can do, regular people. Ask your doctor the questions. What's the data? I mean, I've seen many times, not personally, but people in my family have asked their doctor when recommended to get the COVID booster, what's the data? And the doctor doesn't know the data. And so doctors need to up their game. It's sort of an interesting thing. Doctors have, uniquely so, almost blind trust by the public. We have had that relationship for decades in this country, partly out of respect, but also because that's, sort of esoteric knowledge, complicated knowledge. Patients trust doctors. A doctor could get a patient to do almost anything. This is the truth. I mean, I've been in patient care for 25 years before I went into public policy. And so that's a burden of massive ethical responsibility. You have blind trust here coming your way. So when patients ask the question, the answer is not to spew out the recommendation. The answer is to show them the information. Show them the data. When the doctor doesn't know the data, they're insecure because they're normal human beings too. And so I think that's something patients should do. They should ask the direct question, why should I take that vaccine? I just got out of a clinic visit for something trivial in Palo Alto Medical Foundation the other day, and they have mandated masks in the hospital. I didn't sit there and ask people because I know the data on masks. It's absurd. But I feel saddened when I see all these doctors walk around with masks on. So we need to call them out directly, ask them the questions. And for that trust, they have to earn that trust now. They've squandered that trust by just saying things that were not really scientifically correct. So this is something a regular person could do. You ask your doctor the question.
I love that. It's such a great piece of advice. Just, ask the questions, ask for the data, and take the power back so that we have a better understanding and hold the doctors accountable so that they go and hold their leadership accountable.
Exactly.